There were other companies that wanted to get into this system, that industry, that really shouldn't have. One was Coleco. Now Coleco is a little bit different than Mattel because they had a very successful business with doing videos, game kind of games, programs that they had. They had their ColecoVision system that was very popular. So they thought they'd get into the computer business. Now they had a real good idea. What they decided to do was buy a system that has everything. Buy their product. You can come out of the box and you're going to have everything you need. Most everything you got before, you might say it's $300, $400, and you find out all you're getting is a keyboard. Then you got to pay extra to get your data, like a cassette or a diskette. You had to pay extra for that. Printer, any of that stuff was all separate. Well, Coleco decided that it's going to be for home use. Let's have everything as you're out of the box and ready to go. So it was a good idea. And they had the printer, and it came with some software. The word processor was out of ROM. You didn't even have to have a diskette to bring it up. Good idea. Bad side is they had a lot of trouble doing the manufacturing of it, and it also turned out to be a very unreliable machine. So much unreliable that it didn't take long before, with all the other competitors that were coming out, the industry was, nobody wanted to buy the Coleco because they were just so unreliable. Coleco thought they could sell 100,000, 500,000 of these units. Eventually they did sell about 100,000 of them, but the rest of them were not sold, and they lost $35 million out of this thing, and they actually never recovered from the cost that they had from their computer business. And Coleco finally went bankrupt in the middle of the 80s. Okay, the Commodore 64. Now that's probably the most successful computer that occurred in the 80s. It was just the right time, the right price, the right product. It just was a powerful little machine for its time, and it got so many people into running computers, not for just games, but you could actually get a lot of work done. Came out in 1982, and it had a 64K memory, which was pretty good at that time. It had very good graphics, very good sound, and they sold 17 million of these over the life of its market. 17 million. So nothing has ever had that many models of anything over today with computers. Never had any as much that the Commodore 64 has. What was also nice about the Commodore was that there was no problem to make programs for the Commodore. If there was a license they had, it was very low, because anybody could make a program for Commodores, and they sure enough did. There were over 10,000 programs available for the Commodore 64 over its life. So so many people that are for your 40s or so, that was probably the first computer that they ever used. A very successful machine. The IBM PC Jr. This came out in 1984, and IBM had so much success with their computers for business use, but they were too expensive for home use. And when IBM could see that the home use was so popular and so successful, they wanted to get into this as well. So they wanted to make a lower version of the PC, and they designed the IBM PC Jr. It was a good idea, but it turned out that it was still quite a more expensive for a system like Commodore for home use. Did not have as much graphics and sound, and so it didn't sell well at home. They hoped that maybe this would still be used in the business use because the PCs were pretty expensive. But the bad side was that even though they thought it would be 100% compatible, some things were not. And they had a smaller keyboard that people turned out to hate, and you couldn't update or any of the use the slots, cards that you could always work on a PC Junior. You couldn't use the PC or the AT cards into the PC Junior. So it just didn't fit anything, and the businesses hated it, the home users hated it, so it was the first failure of IBM with their computers. Okay, this is the IBM AT. Came out in 1984. This was IBM's second generation of their computers. It was a big jump in power from the old PC. PC used an 8088 CPU, where the AT used a Intel 8286. The main thing is that it had a 16-bit bus rather than the PC that had the 8-bit bus. So the machine was probably 5 or 6 times faster than the PC. Had some other things that were kind of new. The old PC had a floppy drive with a 360K capacity, where the AT had the 1.2 meg. It also came with a 20 meg hard drive, and it had a much better color monitor called the EGA, which could actually have 16 colors at one time, which was the newest color you could get. So it's a very popular machine in businesses, kind of expensive for home use, but a very good popular machine at work. Okay, now in 1984 there was a real jump in computers, and this was the Apple came out with its Macintosh. This was the first GUI operating system that most people had ever seen before. This changed a whole lot of things for people today. Even though it had a very small screen for the time, it was the first of most people that ever got any use with a graphic operating system. Okay, this is the IBM PS2. Came out in 1987. Okay, now the IBM PC XT, it was so popular that it became the standard for computers. And since IBM designed that thing so it had an open architecture, all the clones started coming out, and it was very easy for everybody to make a PC that would work with the IBM software. So on the good side, when they did it that way, they did create the standard. On the bad side, that since they made it open architecture, there wasn't any license that they had to deal with, and other companies started doing a lot of the things that an IBM would do without them getting any money out of it. So towards the end of the middle of the 80s, it was very easy to buy a computer from other companies that were a lot cheaper than the IBM, and IBM was losing its market. So they decided, hey, let's learn what we've learned from that, and let's update to the third generation of computers. And they brought out their own new architecture called micro channel, and it actually was a very good system and very fast. But what they did, they made sure that nobody can do anything from an IBM PS2 unless the license are paid through IBM. Well, it was a great idea, but a lot of other companies said, well, we just don't need to have to go to the PS2. We'll just find ways to do things with the other computers. Even though they weren't as fast as the PS2 for that age, people just would not pay the money that IBM wanted. So they sold a lot of them to businesses, but slowly they started losing their share of the market, and I think in the early 90s, IBM finally gave up with the computer business after losing so much money on it. They did keep the laptop business for a long time until back in the 2000 or so. They sold that to a China company. I also have a few games that came out early. This was a puzzle game from 1978 called Computer Race. This is a kind of a kids education set from Radio Shack from 1977. Supposed to have kids show how digital works. And I have the copy of the think-a-tron. Think-a-tron was probably the first game kid, any toy kid about computers. This came out in 1967, and it looked just like an old punch card, and it works. It's the kids ask a question, they run through their cards. There's a little light that comes up to tell them what the answer is, and it was pretty little cool game. Also, I just show, you know, before 1980, we didn't have word processors and everything. We had to do it ourselves using a typewriter or a calculator. And this is the age that people were using around 1980. Or when I was a kid, we still had the same, but we had a, they weren't electronics, they were more just powered from electricity. But we said I had the old typewriters and a adding machine. And then I also have a set of even older set. These are from around 1930. Everything is just manual, and working the typewriter would really tire your fingers off because there was no power to control it. It was all just pushing it down. But it got the thing done, and there I have a Burroughs adding machine to the left of the 30s, and had to pull down the handle to make it work. Okay guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed that some, and I guess all I can say at this point is this is Atco signing off.